I'll of course have a link to this in the description. Simply follow that link, select your platform and hit install. Then simply follow the installation instructions that you see on the screen. It should be pretty straightforward. Once you're done, we can simply hit close. And next up, we want to install Visual Studio Code. Again, I'll of course have a link for this in the description. Simply download and follow the installation screen. And once it's done, we can go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code. Now, VS Code by default is really lightweight and it doesn't have the necessary tools for us to start writing in C#. Instead, we need to install this as an extension. So let's go to the bottom icon in the left-hand side. And here we can go ahead and search for C#. Let's select the first one, as we can see, C# by Microsoft. And let's simply go ahead and hit install. And once it's finished, we are ready to start writing C#. However, there are actually a lot of really cool extensions available here. One that I personally like is the VS Code icons. So I'm going to search for icons here and select the VS Code icons and install it. It then prompts me to select it as an icon theme here, which I'm going to do. You can also hit this button right here. And all this does is just add some nice user-friendly icons to all of our files. And with that, we can go ahead and close down this page and go to the top icon here. And we are now ready to create our first project. So to do that, let's go to our desktop here and let's create a folder that is going to store our project. I'm going to call it My Awesome Program. And right now, this is of course completely empty. So let's go ahead and fill this up with a project. To do that, we go inside of VS Code, we hit Open Folder, we navigate to the My Awesome Program folder and hit Select. And as we can see, it's now opened up in VS Code, but of course it's still completely empty. So let's create a new project in here. To do that, we go to Terminal at the top here and create a new terminal. This is a command line interface that allows us to call certain commands. And as you can see here, we're currently inside of the My Awesome Program folder on my desktop. So we can go ahead and call a command in here called .NET space new in order to create a new project here. And we're then going to type console in order to use the simple console template. Let's hit enter. And as you can see, this creates some files in our project. The most important one is the program.cs file. This is the meat of our program, and it's where we're going to write our first lines of code. Now, for some of you, the font size might be very small by default. So to change this, we can go up to View and open up the command palette. You can also press Ctrl-Shift-P. And what this allows us to do is search through all kinds of commands. In our case, we want to change some user settings, so let's simply search for user settings. And indeed, here we can open the preferences and go under user settings. And right here, we can change the font size. Now I'm just going to set this to something like 24. And I'm also going to search at the top here for code lens. And here where it says editor code lens, I'm going to disable that. What this does is it overlays some extra information on top of your code. And I find that's a bit confusing for beginners, so I recommend just turning this off. And that's it for our setup. Now, we're not going to get into the code itself in this video. Instead, I'll just quickly show you how to run your program, as you're going to be doing that a lot. Now, if we look at our code here, we can see that by default, there's a bit in here. And this might look really scary. But for now, we can ignore everything except this line right here. This line writes out the words hello world in our console. So if we run our program now, it should simply display hello world. To run our program, we can go to our terminal and type .NET space run and hit enter. And indeed, it says hello world. But typing in this command every time we want to run our code is a bit annoying. Instead, we can tell VS Code how to run our program. Let's again press Ctrl-Shift-P to open up the command palette. Let's search for generate and select .NET generate assets for build and debug. And as you can see, this creates two new files in our program folder, launch and tasks. These files tell VS Code how to run our code while we're working on the program. By default, these are set up correctly, except that we want our program to open in a new window when we run it, instead of just having it down here in the internal console. So to change this, we go into our launch.json file and look for a property called console. And we're simply going to change this from internal console to external terminal with a non-capital E and a capital T. Now, if we save this and go to our program, we can actually run our code by simply going run, start debugging. And what you will see here is a bunch of things happening. You will see some things flashing on your screen. You will see things printed in the debug console. And you might even see a window quickly open and then close immediately. And the reason for this is not that our program didn't run. It did actually start, but it also closed as soon as the program was finished. And right now it's finished as soon as it said hello world. So we didn't even really get a chance to see it. So to fix this, let's add a line underneath here. So I'm going to add a new line here. And this line here is going to tell our program to wait for some input before closing. For now, we can just write after me. I'm going to type console.read key. And remember, capitalization is important here. Open and close parentheses and a semicolon. So this line is simply going to say, hey, we're going to wait for any kind of input from our keyboard. And this way, if we save this and go run our program, so we'll go to run, start debugging, or you can simply press F5, we can indeed see that it opens up, it displays hello world, and when we then press a key, I'm just going to press the space bar here, the program is finished and it closes automatically.